I think I was invited because I'm an author and a quote occult expert unquote. But I just keep telling people I'm attending as a professional weirdo.
Take a playful look with Enfys Book as they roll for crit hits with pagan wordsmiths.
Hi there, and welcome to Four Quick Cues, Book Talk with Enfys. I'm Enfys J. Book, and on this show, I ask pagan authors 4 quick questions chosen by a roll of the dice. Today, I am super excited to interview my friend Jamie Waggoner, pronouns she, her. Jamie is a pagan priestess, philosopher, writer, and teacher. Jamie has studied esoteric and occult subjects since 1995. She holds a Kingian Nonviolence Level 1 trainer certification from the Selma Center for Nonviolence, Truth, and Reconciliation. Jamie uses her skills and experience gained over 20 years of magical praxis to lead workshops, rituals, sacred circles, and study programs. In addition to her independent projects, Jamie is a co-founder and teacher for Way of the Weaver, a queer-centric, inclusive program of magical inquiry, social justice, and community building. She has been a devotee of Hades since 2016. Jamie, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm so excited too. It was such a delight to meet you at Pagonicon this year. We got to sit and talk about Hades a whole bunch, who's, Hades
it really was.
One of my favorite divine beings to work with, and I've been so enjoying reading your book, Hades, Myth, Magic, and Modern Devotion, that just came out from Llewellyn. First of all, gorgeous cover. Holy cow. Beautiful cover. But also, what I'm really enjoying about it are how you have Hades speaking at the beginning of each chapter and telling one of the myths featuring Hades from Hades' perspective. And it really brings it to life. You're such an excellent storyteller where it really feels like you're right there and you're right in his head. But it also just has a lot of really interesting tips and useful historical background. So yeah, I'm just really loving it. Was it a fun book to write?
Yes, it was really fun to write. It was fun to write, and also, I think one of the challenges for writing a book about Hades is that, unlike other deities in Greek mythology or world mythology in general, Hades doesn't really have a central myth. So you have to look in unexpected places to find him. So research took me into plays, into art and sculpture, into bits of poetry and philosophy from the ancient world, all kinds of places. So I want to say that was probably it was fun because it was like a treasure hunt. And I feel like there really was sort of a spiritual or magical sort of facet to it, because it seemed like I was always able to find the information that I was searching for when I needed it. So I really liked that. But yeah, each chapter starts with a little narrative piece called Hades Speaks, and it's written in first person from Hades' perspective. And that was actually the best part of writing the book. My process in doing that is I actually go into trance journey and I talk to Hades, which is, a cornerstone of my magical practice in general. But for the book specifically, I asked him to retell his story in his words, and also with the audience in mind that would be reading the book. So, what he wanted people to know about him right now. And so, getting to know him deeply over the course of writing it was phenomenal. I don't really have a lot of words for that. And people seem to really be connecting with that part of the book, with hearing Hades talk about his story and his life and his background. And I have to say that was, that part is like co-written by Hades. I would basically come out of trance journey and scribble down as fast as I possibly could what he told me. So we have to kind of give him some of the credit for that as well.
Co-authored by Hades, yes. Awesome. Well, have you ever been interviewed by a dice before?
No, I have not.
I did have someone say yes once, and it kind of threw me a little bit, to be honest. It's not a common interview format. As you know, one of our traditions is to have our guest name the dice for the purposes of the interview. And since we are audio only, I will describe the dice for people who cannot see it. It is a gold dice, and each of the triangles has a dark green background with red glitter, and the raised numbers are gold. It's very heavy and metal, and I thought kind of badass, befitting Hades. So, what would you like to name it for this interview?
I yeah, I the only thing that's really coming to mind, I don't this is not specifically Hadean, but I don't know, I think kind of it should be named Disco Ball Fred.
Disco Ball Fred? Hell yeah. Okay, Disco Ball Fred, let's ask some questions. Our first question is about spirituality. We rolled a 4. How. Oh, this is perfect for you. Do you work with particular deities in association with your writing?
Disco
As you
Ball
write about
Fred.
deities. Disco Ball
Um
Fred's got a sense of humor.
I know, Disco Ball Fred's like, okay. I'm just gonna lob her a softball for this. Um, so, Hades, Myth, Magic, and Modern Devotion is my first full-length book that I've released. Prior to this, I've written, articles for journals and various anthologies and things like that. Um, but deity work, if I'm writing something specifically about magic or about my pagan practice, of course, like deity work is very central to that, and my process is very similar. Like to what I described with the Hades narratives, where I will go into trance journey and I will sort of ask for ideas about what I should talk about and how I should what the framework should be, how I should craft, even if it's an article that I'm trying to write. And I've worked with other deities from other pantheons. In particular, the Welsh pantheon is of deities from the Mabinogion is very near and dear to my heart. I am, also a I consider Caradwyn one of my patrons. I also work very closely with Ariane Road and Bronwyn and some of the others there. So I would say yes, it's very important to me as a writer. It's really basically where all of my Awen, my inspiration comes from.
Did you work exclusively with Hades for this book, or did you call in any of those others to work with you?
Oh, that's a good follow-up. Yeah. So for this book, I worked primarily with Hades, although during the part of the year when she's in the underworld, I also spoke with Persephone too, especially for chapter 3, which is the chapter that covers their story together. So I spoke with her a lot, and I also ended up speaking with over the years that I've been practicing with Hades, because the underworld is a place that's populated by many, many beings, right? So I've developed, kind of relationships with others that are down there. In particular, I talk to Thanatos a lot. I end up talking to Charon a lot, obviously, because he takes me there and brings me back. So occasionally somebody would kind of like tag in with, a couple little like tidbits of, oh, you should talk about this, or oh, you should like let them know this. So yeah, so there were a few others that also added to the discussion.
Were there any surprises from those kind of additional conversations you had apart from Hades? Were there any where like Charon said something and you were like, oh, I never thought of that?
Well, in my practice, I just started doing this kind of spontaneously one day. I was doing a trance journey, going to the underworld. Charon came, and I have like a reusable token that I hand him every time, sort of like to pay my way on the ferry. And when I come back, he hands it back to me, and we've worked this out like over our time together. And with the token, I had happened to I think I had made some cookies that day or something earlier. I can't remember what it was, but it was something that I baked. It was a dessert. And I was like, "Hey, would you like a cookie? I just made these." And Karen was super excited. And that's when I
Aw.
learned that he really appreciates like when people bring him treats. And so that was really fun. And I ended up putting that tidbit in the book because he interacts with a lot of different, not only like mortal souls, but a lot of different beings and like psychopomps and things like that. He's got a good, like, ear to the ground, so to speak. He's got some good gossip. So he's a little bit of a surprising figure. That doesn't really get like fleshed out very much.
Mm,
Um, the other thing that really surprised me, and I don't want to give away the whole story for people that haven't read it yet, but in chapter 3, like the retelling of Hades' story, where he's talking about Persephone, the end of that, the emphasis on "let us be notorious," that line came from Persephone, like that, like rolled like out of her mouth. She was like, "This is how it should." And I came out of that trance journey, and I was like, "Oh, that's good," you know.
I
And I'm like,
love that line.
I wouldn't have thought of that. So yeah.
I bookmarked that page because I loved that part of the story so much. And I'm like, I need to remember that. That's such a good line and such a really cool perspective on how that story ends.
Yeah, that was from her. That was her edition. So
All right, well, let's go to question 2, which is about writing. Disco Ball Fred, what we got here? 3. What motivates you to write each day or on the days that you do write?
what motivates me to write each day. So before because now I am actually a freelance professional, so I have a lot of control over my schedule. But I used to work a corporate job, and writing was actually part of that. I worked in marketing as a creative director and marketing copywriter. So what used to compel me is eating and paying my bills.
It's amazing how motivating that is.
you know like, yeah, so I've been like a professional writer my entire adult life. I am just really super 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 lucky now that I get to choose like passion projects that I really want to write. And so I think that is so different for me, and it still feels very, very new and almost unbelievable in some ways. Um, I think what really motivates me, especially when I was writing Hades and when I'm going to write, the next books that I kind of have like on tap that are coming, what motivates me is my my love for the deities that I write about, and my like genuine heartfelt devotion um, to sort of to share with the world and portray them the way that I've gotten to know them, and how meaningful they are to me. And then the other thing is also just to share how magic can be easy and accessible and very beneficial in some ways, and to give people a solid foundation in it, because it's been such a I don't even know, a force in my life, a positive force in my life. And yeah, to just kind of welcome more people into the magical circle. I think that that's what really motivates me. And especially with Hades in particular, I started working with Hades. There was no book like this. The one I wrote is kind of one of a kind in a lot of ways. Um, and I thought to myself, I'm like, there's gotta be other weirdos out there that want this information all in one place. And that really motivated me to outline it and pitch it to Llewellyn. So yeah.
Yeah, even when I visited Greece in 2015, I really wanted to get a statue of Hades, and every, gift shop that I went to that had statuary, I found just about every other Olympian, but it was really hard to find Hades. And I finally asked, I kept asking the shopkeepers, I'm like, do you have Hades? And then, language difference, they'd be like, Ares? Like they would hear Ares.
Mhm.
And I mean, no, 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 no. And I would like kind of point downward, and they're like, oh, and they'd kind of look at me. They're
Point
like,
at the ground.
"No, we don't have,
No.
we don't have that one." Like, why would you want that one? Was kind of the
Yeah.
implication,
Yeah.
and I love how you address that in the book, where you're like, there are some cultural, prohibitions or
Mhm.
unease about working with him historically because you don't want to invite death into your life,
Exactly.
but there's so many benefits to working with him, and he's such a compelling and surprisingly kind and compassionate deity to work with.
Yeah, I really think so. And um, not everybody's going to work with Hades or connect with Hades, and that's absolutely fine. But for those of us who might want to, I'm really happy that I was able to kind of cobble together this resource for us, because I think just like we need people that are dedicating themselves to Aphrodite or to the Morrigan or to anybody else. There's some of us that need to actually work with like the magic and the mystery of death. So, yeah. But I totally get that. And it's completely like the cultural context is, you didn't really want to mention Hades by name or have images of him around because that might accidentally catch his attention.
Exactly. And he's not even the one who takes you if you die, so
No,
it kind
he's
of
not.
doesn't even make sense in that way, but maybe that's not widely known for people who aren't deeply connected to the
Yeah.
mythology. But yeah, it was kind of, I think, on the same token, that's why we don't have any books about him, is because there's sort of this unease about working with him. So I'm so glad you wrote the book, because it's one that I really wanted to read as someone who's like, he's one of probably my top 5 like
Oh,
deities that I love
good.
to
Oh,
work
that's
with. So,
awesome. Yeah.
and there are books on just about everyone else, but not about him. So
Sometimes I wonder, I'm like, okay, what point is it going to approach the fact? Is it going to actually be a fact that I've literally said his name more than any other human in history ever? Um, you know,
you know,
so I think about that a lot.
I don't know. You think the Orphic cults might have maybe
Yeah,
by the time maybe
yeah, maybe they may have. Well, I think in the Orphic cults, they probably would have called him by a different name,
mm,
because he does have like some epithets that refer to
that's
facets of
true.
his personality or purview, and so
Hmm.
typically, like he would be called by an epithet because that was another way of like, well, we'll call you Pluton or we'll call you Klemenos, like we'll call you like something else so that we're not actually saying your name.
He's saying the name, yeah. Sort of dancing around it a little bit. That makes sense. Well, maybe you do hold that record. Who
Maybe.
knows?
Who knows?
All right, question 3 is the not writing specific professional questions question set.
Okay.
Disco Ball Fred has given us 3 again. Oh, is there a conference you'd like to speak at but haven't been able to yet?
Interesting. A conference I'd like to speak at, but I haven't been able to. Hmm. I'm gonna have to think about that one. So, conferences that I've been to and done workshops at. So at Paganicon, which is the first one I went to this year, where I met you, which was really great. Love that event. Recommend it for all the folks that are listening. Um, Mystic South is great. I've done that. I've done Salem Witch Fest and like a number of really cool online stuff like Botanica Obscura and um, my friend Vivian used to do a conference series online as well. So I'm just trying to think of, and all of those are so great. I'm
There's a lot
trying
of
to
great
think
ones
of,
out there for
yeah,
sure.
I'm trying to think of what would be, oh goodness, I don't know. Of course, now also I speak about Hades, so it's like very, it's different. It's kind of a different ask or a different invite. So last week I got the notification that I have been asked to be an attending professional at DragonCon in Atlanta. So, that was in the
Yay!
back of my mind when you were asking, when what was it, Disco Fred was asking me where I'm like, well, that's kind of my dream, right? Is to kind of, I love doing the metaphysical conferences, but it would be so cool to take Hades into like more of like a public sphere of like, of general interest and things like that. Um, so I'm very excited to go to Dragon Con, and that happens around Labor Day in Atlanta, Georgia. It's a huge, it's like a Comic-Con type of event. And it's a huge event. I used to live in Atlanta, so I am very familiar with how it takes over like the whole downtown area. It's going to be amazing eye candy because I get to see everybody cosplaying and doing all that fun stuff. But also, I think I was invited because I'm an author and a quote occult expert unquote. But I just keep telling people I'm attending as a professional weirdo. So
There
I'll
are a
have
lot of
I'll
professional weirdos at Dragon Con.
yeah. So so that one's really exciting. Um, And I didn't think that was going to happen actually. So I guess I'm going to have to go and, give everybody the report on how that went and then decide like what's the next step after that.
Have you attended Dragon Con before?
I've never actually bought the pass and attended like sessions and things like that. But like I said, it takes over the whole like downtown Atlanta area for that entire, I think it's like a 5 to 7 day span. So, I've gone down there and I've walked through the hotels and been on like the convention floors and like, we purposefully go and like eat in restaurants so you can like kind of see everybody and just sort of people watch. And then they do, a really big parade that anybody can attend. Like it's just through the streets of downtown Atlanta. And so we go to the parade every year too. So all of that stuff is really, really fun. And now I'm excited because I get to be kind of like in it behind the scenes.
We'll have to talk about it after the show because my band has performed there 3 times. So
Oh, cool.
I've, I've got tips, I've got background, and happy to
Okay.
discuss it. It was
Okay.
one of our best gigs. It's such a huge and very, very crowded event.
Yeah, yeah, it certainly is. Yeah, for sure. But yes, I would love to have any insider tips that you have. Yeah, let's definitely chat about that.
Heck yeah. All right, now we come to the final of the 4 questions, which is the random encounter question.
Random encounter question.
And for this question, Disco Ball Fred gets joined by a 4-sided friend, and this question is chosen from a table of 80 possibilities. So let's see what weird question Disco Ball Fred wants to ask you. Side note, Disco Ball Fred is hard to read at this angle. So I got a 3 and a 14. What's your favorite midnight snack?
Oh, that's a great question. Hmm, favorite midnight snack? The thing that immediately comes to mind is chocolate chip cookie dough.
Ooh, solid choice. Is that
Not
one
not
that's been a lifelong one, or is that, a more
yeah,
recent one?
pretty much. Well, yeah, pretty much. I mean, um, yeah, it's not an exotic choice, but it's definitely a solid choice.
It's been such a pleasure to have you on, Jamie. I would love it if you could tell our audience about anything you're excited to share right now, whether that's the book, upcoming events, and also where people can find you online.
Okay. So you can, my website is jamiewaggoner.com, and it has a lot of information about not only Hades, but the other anthologies and projects that I've worked on. And it also has all of the events. So my event schedule is on there. You can sign up for my newsletter if you like. I occasionally send out a fun and informal newsletter. It's maybe like once a month whenever I put it together. But then you'll know where I'm going to be all the time if you want to catch up with that. Also, my socials are on there. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. You can check that stuff out if you like. Also, check out wayoftheweaver.com. That's my teaching collaborative with my really good friend Murphy Robinson, whom I deeply love and admire. And we have such a fun time teaching, and it's such an amazing community. It's a queer centric, very inclusive community. And we teach about magic kind of from an open source perspective. Like, we don't really teach a specific tradition or anything like that. It's more like a toolkit kind of thing. And our next event coming up is Weaver Camp. And so this is a 4-day camp in the woods of Vermont on the side of a mountain, and it includes your food and also like beautiful spaces to pitch a tent and camp. Although you can also stay off land if camping's not your thing. But it's coming up in June, and the details about that are at wayofweaver.com. You can check it out. You can kind of get a sense for. It's not actually enrolling yet. We're opening enrollment on May 14th, and we have 30 spots because we don't like to be we want to make sure we're still being gentle on the land, so we do kind of limit the registration, but it is so fun. We do lots of magic and lots of ritual and just hang out and like swim in creeks and all kinds of good stuff. So it's like summer camp for grown-ups with like a witchy bent to it. So That's coming up. And I talked about Dragon Con, which was, really fun to get that notification last week. But I'm also going to be at Mystic South. That's coming up in between. Mystic South happens in July, and it's a metaphysical conference in Atlanta, Georgia. And it's a really, really good one. I really like it a lot. And I'll be presenting a workshop about Hades. Actually, Emphas, it's the workshop that you went to, Paganicon. So
Yay! It's a good
it
one. Everyone should go to it.
has the underworld journey and all of that good stuff. Also, I'm teaming up with a fellow oracular priestess named Amanda Haker, and we're doing a Hades and Hecate ritual where we're going to be in in state with the deity. So we'll be channeling the deities in the ritual. So if you'd like to meet Hades in person, you should come to Mystic South.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. I will put all of that in the show notes. And thank you for being here. This was just a delight to chat with you again. I had so much fun talking to you at
Yes.
Paganicon. We're definitely birds of a feather, and I hope we will get to hang out at future events.
Oh,
And
me too.
thank you to my Yay! Thank you to my listeners here for listening to my weird, nerdy little dice-based interview show. And if you enjoyed this episode of 4 Quick Cues Book Talk with Enfys, be sure to like, subscribe, and leave a review on your podcast app of choice. Check out more content from me, Enfys, at majorarqueerna.com. That's majorarqueerna.com. Whatever time it is where you are, I hope you have a fantastic day, and may the dice of fate roll well for you.
Thanks for listening to 4 Quick Cues.